On June 6, 1944, when American soldiers stormed the beaches of Normandy, the world saw courage that echoed lessons first learned in the American Civil War. Hitler, who once proclaimed in 1939 that the Reich would last 1,000 years, watched in disbelief as his empire began collapsing within just 12. Franklin D. Roosevelt, speaking in his famous D-Day prayer on June 6, 1944, reminded Americans that our sons, pride of our nation, have set upon a mighty endeavor, words that carried the same weight as Lincoln's "A house divided against itself cannot stand" speech of 1858. From France to Berlin, every advance reflected not just World War II bravery, but also the endurance, discipline, and industrial might sharpened during the Civil War. What Americans learned in the 1860s, the cost of freedom, the brutality of modern combat, and the power of unity, returned in full force to defeat fascism and reshape the world. "A house divided against itself cannot stand," declared Abraham Lincoln in 1858. By 1861, the United States stood split between Union and Confederacy. 11 southern states seceded after Lincoln's election, fearing slavery's end. But on April 12, 1861, Confederate cannons fired on Fort Sumter. In this video, we will discuss 25 hidden truths about the Civil War. Before we begin, please like, share, and subscribe for more history. It was the opening shot of the bloodiest conflict in American history. The war would rage for 4 years and devastate millions of lives. More than 620,000 soldiers would perish before it ended. That toll was greater than all previous American wars combined. Some estimates today suggest as many as 750,000 deaths. The population of America in 1860 was only 31 million. This meant 1 in 10 men of military age would die. Families everywhere mourned fathers, brothers, and sons. The Civil War was not just another war, it was America's apocalypse. In July 1861, civilians gathered at Bull Run for entertainment. They brought picnic baskets and opera glasses, expecting a quick Union triumph. Instead, they watched a chaotic bloodbath unfold before their eyes. Union soldiers retreated in panic. Congressmen fled the field and reality set in. The war would not be short, easy, or romantic. It would be savage, brutal, and unlike anything America had seen. Weapons technology had outpaced old military strategy. The rifled musket made killing faster and deadlier at longer ranges. The mini-ball expanded on impact, shattering bones and ripping flesh. Old tactics of marching in lines became suicidal against new firepower. The first battle of Bull Run was America's bloody awakening. It was only the beginning of unimaginable horrors to come. But we will reveal that later. Chapter 2: Disease, Death, and Human Cruelty. The greatest killer of the war was not the gun. It was disease, invisible and merciless, spreading through filthy camps. 2/3 of Civil War deaths came from illness, not bullets. Dysentery killed more soldiers than musket balls ever did. Typhoid and malaria spread through contaminated water and mosquito swarms. Pneumonia swept through winter camps, claiming thousands each year. Over 1 million Union soldiers reported severe intestinal disease during the conflict. Nearly 700,000 Confederate soldiers suffered similar infections. Medical science was crude and primitive by modern standards. Doctors often carried unwashed instruments from patient to patient. Amputations were common, performed without antiseptics or even anesthesia. Chloroform and ether were scarce. So many soldiers were conscious during surgery. At Shiloh in 1862, 20,000 men were wounded in 2 days. Their injuries glowed faintly blue at night, baffling survivors. This eerie phenomenon became known as Angel's Glow. In 2001, scientists discovered it was caused by beneficial bacteria. Those microbes killed infection, saving countless soldiers without anyone realizing it. But not everyone was lucky. Field hospitals were horrific scenes of blood, screams, and infection. Doctors sawed off limbs in minutes to save precious time. 2/3 of surgeries ended with amputation. Gangrene and septic shock followed far too many operations. In those makeshift hospitals, men prayed for death as mercy. Prison camps told an equally chilling story of human cruelty. Andersonville Prison in Georgia held 45,000 Union captives. 13,000 of them died from starvation and disease. Prisoners had little shelter and survived on handfuls of cornmeal. The dead were buried in mass trenches, side by side. In Elmira Prison in New York, conditions were just as grim. Nearly 1 in 4 Confederate prisoners died in filth and neglect. Horrifyingly, New Yorkers sometimes paid 10 cents to watch prisoners suffer. Human misery had become public entertainment. The Civil War revealed not only military brutality, but also moral collapse. Chapter 3: Blood, Revenge, and Personal Wars. The Civil War was not fought only on battlefields. It also unleashed vengeance, personal vendettas, and acts of private war. In 1862, Union General Jefferson Columbus Davis murdered General William Nelson. He shot him in a Kentucky hotel after a heated argument. Despite dozens of witnesses, Davis was never court-martialed. The Union needed experienced officers too badly to enforce justice. Jack Hinson's story became a legend of vengeance. His 2 sons were executed by Union soldiers. Their severed heads were nailed to his family's fence. Hinson took up a rifle and waged war on his own. From the Tennessee hills, he became a deadly sniper. He is credited with killing 100 Union soldiers and officers. Despite Union attempts, Hinson survived until old age. His personal war was one man's answer to unimaginable grief. Not all stories were about revenge. Some were about resilience. John Clem, known as the drummer boy of Chickamauga, was only 10 years old. He enlisted in the Union Army and became a child soldier. At Chickamauga in 1863, Clem fought with a musket. He killed a Confederate officer who demanded his surrender. Clem's courage made him a national hero. He remained in the Army for life, retiring in 1915 as a 2-star general. Clem became the last Civil War veteran still in active service. The war blurred the line between boy and man, soldier and civilian. It turned children into warriors before they understood childhood itself. Chapter 4: Madness, Morality, and Dark Secrets. Boston Corbett's story embodied the madness of war. Before the conflict, he castrated himself to avoid temptation. Later, he served bravely in the Union Army. In 1865, Corbett disobeyed orders and shot John Wilkes Booth. Booth had assassinated Lincoln just days earlier at Ford's Theater. Corbett briefly became a hero, but soon vanished into obscurity. He disappeared in 1894, never seen again. The war also carried shocking social consequences. Venereal disease was rampant among soldiers. The Union Army documented over 200,000 cases. To control the crisis, officials in Nashville legalized sex work. Health inspections and treatment were required for prostitutes serving soldiers. This experiment reduced infections but ended after the war. It was one of the earliest examples of government-controlled health regulation. War also inspired daring operations. The Great Locomotive Chase of April 1862 was one such mission. Union raiders hijacked a Confederate train named the General. They destroyed tracks and telegraph lines to cripple supply routes. Confederates pursued them across Georgia in dramatic fashion. 8 raiders were executed after capture, but 19 received the first medals of honor in American history. Even in chaos, courage and sacrifice shone like burning stars. Chapter 5: Riots, Revolts, and the Home Front. While soldiers died on battlefields, civilians fought their own wars. In July 1863, the first federal draft sparked outrage in New York. Working-class men, furious over exemptions for the wealthy, rioted violently. Black citizens were lynched, homes were burned, and chaos reigned for 4 days. The official death toll was 119, but historians believe closer to 1,200 died. It remains one of the deadliest riots in American history. Meanwhile, battles raged with staggering losses. At Antietam in September 1862, over 22,000 soldiers were killed or wounded in one day. It remains the single bloodiest day in American military history. At Gettysburg in July 1863, casualties exceeded 50,000 in 3 days. Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, delivered months later, became immortal: that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom. Those words carried the weight of sacrifice and hope. Technology shaped the war as much as men did. Railroads moved armies faster than ever before. The telegraph allowed Lincoln to command in near real time. The press delivered battlefield news to civilians almost instantly. Photography captured the horrors of dead soldiers on the ground. For the first time, America saw the true face of war. Chapter 6: Victory, Assassination, and the Price of Peace. By 1864, the Union finally began tightening its grip. General Ulysses S. Grant pressed relentlessly against Robert E. Lee's army. William Tecumseh Sherman marched to the sea, burning Atlanta and devastating Georgia. The Confederacy was running out of men, supplies, and hope. By April of 1865, Richmond, the Confederate capital, fell to Union troops. Only days later, Robert E. Lee surrendered at Appomattox Courthouse. The bloodiest conflict in American history was finally over. The Civil War had killed more than 620,000 soldiers. Some estimates reach as high as 750,000. This meant 1 in 10 white men of military age in the South was dead. The Union had lost nearly 360,000 soldiers. The Confederacy had lost about 260,000. Civilians suffered starvation, ruin, and shattered communities. The economy of the South collapsed completely, losing nearly 2/3 of its wealth. But tragedy struck even at the war's end. On April 14, 1865, President Abraham Lincoln attended a play at Ford's Theater. There, John Wilkes Booth, a Confederate sympathizer, shot him in the head. Lincoln died the next morning, becoming the first American president assassinated. The nation, just beginning to heal, plunged into grief and chaos. Booth was hunted down and killed days later, but the damage was done. Lincoln's death left America's future uncertain. Conclusion: blood, sacrifice, and America's legacy. The Civil War was more than a clash of armies. It was a test of a nation's soul and its survival. It redefined freedom, abolished slavery, and reshaped the United States forever. More than 2% of the population perished in the conflict. The war introduced America to modern death, modern medicine, and modern sorrow. It gave rise to national cemeteries, Memorial Day, and the concept of sacrifice. 4 American presidents would eventually be assassinated in office. Abraham Lincoln in 1865, James Garfield in 1881, William McKinley in 1901, John F. Kennedy in 1963, all fell to assassins' bullets, each leaving behind legacies drenched in tragedy. Yet from their blood and the soldiers' graves, America grew stronger. The nation endured, rebuilt, and became a world power. What Americans enjoy today was forged in fire and suffering. The freedoms, democracy, and unity of the present were bought at terrible cost. The sacrifices of Lincoln, Kennedy, and countless unnamed soldiers still echo in history. And what Americans get today was the blessing of those sacrifices, blood and gun. Please subscribe to our channel, like and share, as tomorrow we will come up with a new story you never heard before.